So perhaps if I can turn to Kerry first. You've written and recently quite extensively on what it is we're getting wrong in the arts. And I'm only slightly afraid, because Kerry has been, I think rightly, very vocal about how national institutions, for instance, the Royal Shakespeare Company, ought to take this responsibility around diversity seriously. Kerry, could you kick us off?
Thank you. It's lovely being here. Thank you for inviting me. It's nice being the token male on the panel. Thank you very much for that too. It's a complicated subject, but the fact that it's been posed here is really healthy, I think. The Stratford I run is in East London. There are over 160 languages in our primary schools. It's one of the most deprived boroughs in the country, even over the Olympics and the regeneration coming through. And it's a very different kind of world to what's here. So I get very angry that with over 40% of London defining itself as non-white, when you look at that statistic and then you look at what's happening in some of our national institutions on the South Bank, you very rarely get that kind of statistic either on stage, backstage, or in the audience. And when you get a huge population of young people now defining themselves as mixed race, the debate around cultural diversity is really complicated. And I think if you're going to be a national institution, you need to serve the complete nation. And I think what some of our national institutions are doing are conservatoires, are experts, are doing something very specific, but not really talking to the world as I see it in London or in some of our other bigger inner cities. I think there is optimism, but if you look at just very recently, if you look at what the Evening Standard Awards, kind of a flagship award in London, or the Oliviers, or even the BAFTAs this time round, the only person of colour was one female who won a Best Supporting Actress in BAFTA. And that was over those 3 awards. Now, the Oliviers were 2 awards for some culturally diverse musicals, but they were imported from America, and that was it. And the biggest problem with that is that our rhetoric's really good in the arts. We talk about being the best in the world. We talk about being world-class leading. And I don't think any of that's not true, but when you use those words and then the entire winners of those awards are all white, then I think it's sending out a very difficult message to the new generations coming up. And also, most importantly for me, is there's a really weak critical debate around culture and the arts. We're not really good at talking about diversity in culture. We're not really good at talking about the other possibilities of what a good storytelling is or what form is. And I'll end on this bit, which is it's really hard. If you're doing a piece of culturally diverse work, it's nearly impossible to find anyone from that culture to review it in the national press.
Yeah.
Our critics, our arts journalists, who are all fabulous and really good at their jobs, but they're coming from a very specific point of view. So even here, if you want to look at storytelling from around the world, or how the form changes, you want to open that up to different kinds of opinions. And I'm afraid in arts journalism, it's very narrow and very white and pale and stale.
And male. I would absolutely agree with you about critical dialogue, and I just put a couple of things out there in terms of the way we've made choices here. So last year we had a season, I know many of you will have seen it, of the Roaring Girls plays, looking at plays from the Elizabethan Jacobean repertoire that had strong female leads and asked questions about gender power, some of them very uncomfortable. And 3, in my view, fabulously interesting contemporary productions of those plays, including Maria Arberg's production of The White Devil. And in that, Maria chose to cast a woman to play Flaminio. And so Flaminio became sister of Vittoria, and the play had a different complexion. And one of our national critics, it's very easy to go and look up who it was, for whom I also have immense respect and properly engages with the repertoire here and right across the country, almost the country, said that the difficulty with that choice was that you could no longer see through Flaminio's eyes as a kind of everyman character. And I thought this was a very important moment, because actually what that's suggesting is this: if you're looking through a man's eyes, it is every man. If you're looking through a woman's eyes, it's about women. Another example is that when we programmed the Swan season that's currently running, and we announced it to quite a distinguished body of critics, we're incredibly lucky at the RSC that we can command the interest of a very wide range of critical voices. The room was all white, the room was mostly male, and we announced what I thought was a rather significant fact, which is that the production of Othello that's currently in rehearsals, it opens in a couple of weeks' time. Hugh Quashie playing Othello was going to have a fabulous actor called Lucia Masmati playing Iago, and therefore Iago and Othello would both be black. And what would that do to the questions around racism that the play gives rise to? And not a single critic remarked on this or wrote about it. What they were really interested in, and it is interesting, is that we were putting on Love Sacrifice by John Ford, and we hadn't done that before. And that is interesting, and Love Sacrifice, extraordinary play, and it's lovely to have discovered it. But I was very struck by how the critical discourse immediately came around at a play by a white, dead man. So I offer that up as an example that it isn't simply when you are making diverse work in Stratford East or London that we don't have voices to engage with it. When the national institutions want to engage with questions of how we might really look different and do things differently, it's very hard to get them to notice you have. Very good. Thank you so much, Kerry.